Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Brad and President Dolman, for inviting me to be here today. Before I start, though, I do feel the need that I need to address what happened in Orlando on Sunday. And I wish I could say something inspiring, something that would make the world see it differently than the horror we often face. Sometimes that horror that even comes to us in our schools. But the truth is that tonight there are 49 beds that are cold, 49 sets of parents and families for whom the world has come to an end. 49 families of choice that have lost their friends, their lovers, their brothers, and their sisters. And yes, there will be teachers who will look at the photos on TV and see the faces of former students for whom they had high hopes. Their spark extinguished forever. And I don't know what to say other than today I stand before you with an aching heart. Part of our human family has been robbed from us. But we move on, and we move on with pride to honor those who lost the hate. As Brad mentioned, over the last year and a half, I have spent a lot of time in Colorado. And I've spent so much time here that my husband has actually said, I think you have another family out in Colorado. And in some ways, he's right. Over the last 18 months, I have shared some incredible moments with the staff and leaders of CEA. I was with President Dolman when the Supreme Court ruled that all people have the right to marry. I was bear hugged by John Ford the moment we learned that not only did we win the recall election, but we ran up the score. And I stood in unity with Lindsey Stearns. Lindsey Stearns and hundreds of members of the Thompson Education Association in our green shirts at a school board meeting. So while I do only have one husband and one dog, and please when I say this, trust me, they're high maintenance enough. I do have a family here in Colorado, and that's all of you, the staff and the leaders of CPA. And in less than a month, many of you will come to my home, Washington, D.C., for the NEA Representative Assembly. And it will be a time to celebrate America's 240th birthday. It will also be a time to celebrate our beautiful and diverse country. It will be a time to celebrate that the beacon of light that is the promise of America still shines bright in the world. That freedom, liberty, and hope still have a place in the world. And that place rests here from coast to coast and in these very purple mountains' majesty. But it will also be a time to celebrate you, the dedicated education professionals who are shaping America's future by molding the students of America into productive members of society and into good global and American citizens. After all, you, educators, are the very definitions of the one who bring hope to the hopeless and inspire the hopeful. And we do have reason to be hopeful and to celebrate, but we need to do so with our eyes wide open to the fact that not all is well in our country. Racism is still present in our country. And the nomination of Donald Trump to be a major party's nominee for President of the United States proves that point. A candidate who believes that a judge cannot be impartial because of his heritage, that 1.4 billion Muslims should not be allowed to enter our country, or that Americans should have a deportation force to round up our undocumented brothers and sisters. All of this has washed away the thin veneer that has been used by some to say America has moved beyond racial issues. I was never more proud to work for any organization than last year at the Representative Assembly, when unanimously we voted to take responsibility and do our part to bring an end to institutional racism. As we seek to shatter the barriers caused by institutional racism, to close the opportunity gap, we can only do so if we go on offense. It is not acceptable to me that in a country with the largest gross domestic product on the planet, that our children and educators are packed into crumbling schools, trapped with outdated technology, and have too few and too old textbooks. This is unacceptable in a nation with the most millionaires and billionaires, that our students have to fight for an ever-shrinking share of economic capital to be dedicated to their education. It is a sign that our social, political, and economic systems are simply not working for most Americans. But there's hope. And that hope was made possible because of you and because of your union. We now have the tool to step boldly into the future, to go on offense, any place, anywhere, anytime, regardless of the political climate. But if we're going to go on offense, if we're going to be successful, we have to do it together. And we need you to join us on the front lines. The new education law, ESSA, the Every Student Succeed Act, gives us 1,059 pages of beautiful ambiguity. And I might add, randomly inserted a pardon for heavyweight boxer Jack Johnson. Now, it might seem strange if this random piece was inserted, but it is Congress, and it shouldn't come as a surprise that it got a vote. Now, let me quickly share with you just a little bit about who Jack Johnson was. Johnson grew up poor in the segregated South as the son of former slaves, but rose to become the world heavyweight boxing champion in 1908. He was the first black man to achieve that distinction and was likely the most famous African American in the world at the time. But Johnson was a controversial figure, and not just for his success. He was described as an individualist who did not feel constrained by the social barriers of his time, particularly with respect to race. One historian wrote, he was scandal, he was gossip, he was a public menace for many and a public hero for some. He was admired, he was feared, he was demonized, he was misunderstood and ridiculed. He also had relationships with white women at a time where that was illegal in most of the country, and many considered that to be morally abhorrent. And because of this, he was targeted by the government, and after several twists and turns, in 1913, he was found guilty of violating the Mann Act, which is a federal law that focused on prostitution. Today, Johnson's conviction is widely seen as blatant racial injustice. And the pardon, which, by the way, because they do this all the time, Congress does not have the authority to grant, was actually sought by United States Senator John McCain, and is probably the single most progressive thing he's ever done. And as they say in Washington, if that's what it takes to get a law passed. But beyond the pardon, ESSA gives us a path forward to fight back against our opponents who seek to underfund, undermine, and dismantle public education. Like some of the seemingly unbeatable opponents Jack Johnson must have faced, we too must stand tall and fight. We too must say, you won't knock us off our feet. You will not win. Not today and not on our watch. As we seek to learn and understand what this bill does, it becomes more apparent that it's conceptually quite simple. It allows you to dream about what your school should look like. It allows you to use your voice to make our schools greater than what they currently are. A chance but to dream of what they could be. And as you wonder what you can do, grab your colleagues, go to a local diner, go to a pub, talk about what your school needs. Hell, write it out on a bar napkin if you have to, and then with the help of your union, share this with your school district. See, the new law requires that all of your voices be heard. But what we can't do, what we can't afford to do, is wait for the state or school districts to come to us. In some ways, I feel as if we too are a boxer, and we're entering the 12th round of our own championship fight, and like Jack Johnson, or maybe even Jack Dempsey, but I see us more like Rocky Balboa. And in every movie, all 39 of them, yes, I've seen them all, Rocky is always behind, but he battles it through the first 11 rounds. And after spending those first 11 rounds taking punches, getting knocked down, and occasionally throwing a jab just to give himself some breathing room, the bell would sound and he'd come out for that 12th round and something special would happen. He'd come out fighting. And he wanted to prove to everyone that he was greater than just the southpaw from Philly. He wanted to prove, and he did, that he was a champion, and he was greater than his opponents. We're in the 12th round of our own championship fight right now, and we're fighting for our lives. And CEA, under the leadership of Carrie, Amy, and Brad, has used igniting the spark of the future through teaching and learning as the way to fight back, to organize, to create the schools that Colorado students deserve. Our fight isn't over. Our quest to be greater than goes on. But all of you should be proud of your union. You should be proud of the work you nobly do each and every day. Each of you is one small spark, one small star shining in the sky. Together, though, we can outshine all of the darkness. Together, we can fight the persistence that is the darkness of the night. Together, we are greater than because we are one voice, and we scream into that night that the students of this state and of this country have a future. And we as educators are going to ensure that they face that future inspired and prepared so that they too can be greater than. Friends, right now we are at a very special moment. We're on the cusp of taking our momentum and launching into a movement. And I've experienced this before in my life as an LGBT organizer. I saw it in 2010 when Congress repealed Don't Ask, Don't Tell. In 2012, when the Supreme Court struck down the Defense of Marriage Act in Wisconsin, made history and elected the first ever openly lesbian to the United States Senate. And in a moment I shared with President Bowman in Albuquerque when marriage equality came to America. I submit to you today that the momentum to save public education is on our side. The only question I have for you is, will you join us? Will you step forward and lead with us? I call on you to say that there is nobody better to lead this movement than educators, but not just educators. Educators who are members of the CEA, educators who are members of the NEA. The time is now for us to reclaim our profession. The time is now for us to end the corporate takeover of our schools. The time is now for us to stop fighting and fight back on the desegregation of our schools. The time is now to end the school-to-prison pipeline. The time is now for us to fight for all students, to close the opportunity gap, to educate the whole child. The time is now for us to unite as one, to stand together as one. Now is the time to inspire the whole world by fulfilling the promise America makes to our students. And not by being a union that is only about salary and benefits, but by being a union that focuses on making sure we are the best educators and the best practitioners of our chosen profession.